Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Success Secrets Revealed. This is a great show. I love this show. I put this show together because I have a radio show called Internet Marketing and Business Solutions with Ronald Couming. And what happened is because of the COVID crisis that's going on in the United States right now, the radio station isn't manning the station. So they're running reruns from past shows for me and other guests. So instead of just, all the reruns, I've been doing that show 3.5, almost 4 years now. So we've always had some great guests, but instead of, constantly hearing information from the past, I wanted to continue bringing people information, especially things that can help you now during COVID and going forward after COVID. So I figure I'm going to bring on subject matter experts, just like I've always have. And what we're going to do is strip out the audio. I'm going to send that to the radio station. There's 1.7 million listeners to that show. And then this live, people can listen to it now, and we'll push it out through all the social media channels in a day or two, as well as our guests will be sharing it out. We have a great guest for you today. Her name is Christine McKay, and sorry, that's the Boston schooling in me. But I'm going to tell you about her in a second. So I wanted to tell you about our sponsor first. Our sponsor is RCS Online Solutions. That's my company, and that's where we help business owners and entrepreneurs, much like you, attract, convert, and retain their ideal customers and clients. What that basically means to you is, clients in business is like oxygen to a business, right? New business. You really have to have new business, lead generations. We get people ranked on the first page of the search engines before people even pay us, for the most part. And lastly on that, if you, just for your own knowledge, if you Google yourself, your name, or you Google your company's name, and you come up on the first page, you might feel that you're on the first page, but I'm here to tell you that doesn't matter. No one's searching for you by name or your company's name. If they know you, your company's name, and the solutions and products and services you provide, they're picking up the phone and calling you. Maybe they forgot your number and they might search just to get your number. But 99.99% of people, when they go online, they don't know who is going to provide that solution or product or service. So they're typing in, looking for that information. So type in your product, your service, your solution. If you come up on the first page, then you're doing good. If you don't, call us, because we will get you ranked on the first page. So now, no more ado. Let me bring on Christine. I'm going to bring her on here, and I'm going to introduce her. Christine, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, wait till I read this bio. We're super excited to have you on here, too. Very grateful, and the audience will be, too. Christine McKay, and I was thinking about McVeigh. Isn't she from Fleetwood Mac?
Oh, I have no idea.
That's why I got the name mixed up. Fleetwood Mac with Stevie Nicks, right?
Yes.
I'm giving away my age now. But so Christine McKay has negotiated across many industries, including software manufacturing, oil and gas, telecommunication, and more. She has extensive experience across many aspects of business. She has negotiated from the viewpoint of both procurement, strategic sourcing, and sales. She has spent most of her career working in mergers and acquisitions and divestitures. Environments, as well as having negotiated many partnerships and JV deals. Christine's academic career culminated with her earning an MBA from Harvard University. Prior to that, she attended Berkshire Community College and earned scholarships to Renaissance. Now, I know that's got to be an important school if you can't pronounce it, right? we'll come back to that. It's Renaissance Polytech. Polytech in New York. McKay's earlier career was in international mergers and acquisitions, where she led various deals, including multiple private securitization deals in Eastern and Western Europe. Very impressive. So Christine, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and feel free to correct some of the butchering I may have done to your accolades, please.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. So it's Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, or RPI, depending on who you ask. So
see, I could have pronounced RPI. Right? I could have got that one.
They used to go by RPI, then they switched it. Now they go by Rensselaer. It's like RPI was easier.
Nice.
So again, thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, I have had this just amazing career, amazing experience. It didn't always start that way, though. I was an unwed teen mom. I was homeless. I was on welfare for over 8 years. I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. And decided I wanted a different life for myself. So I negotiated one. And I started out at Berkshire Community College in Western Massachusetts, and earned a 4.0 and got a full ride scholarship to go to Rensselaer. And I was the first woman to graduate from Rensselaer who was both a full-time student and a single mom, because I had left my first husband at that point. And so did RPI Rensselaer as a single mom. Graduated cum laude and took a position with Verizon. What is now Verizon? Then it was Bell Atlantic, and I started. I met the man of my dreams, remarried. We're about to celebrate our 27th anniversary, wow. And I've had an opportunity to start working in international mergers and acquisitions with Bell Atlantic, and I took it and was able to travel all over the world, working in Eastern and Western Europe and Southeast Asia. And I kind of joke and say I helped make the euro possible, because Europe was not under a common currency then, and governments were selling their state-owned assets in order to buy into the common currency. And so I was able to work on a number of those deals, and then decided I needed an MBA and went to Harvard. And
of course.
What's that?
Of course.
The proudest moment of my life has been when you graduate from Harvard. If you have kids at the business school, they walk in front of you when you cross the stage. So my daughters walked in front of me at Harvard Business School when I got my degree. Wow. And so then I've negotiated with almost half of the Fortune 500 in 53 countries. But I love working with small businesses. I'm from North Central Montana, in a tiny town. My parents were small business owners, and I got really frustrated at seeing how large companies deal with small businesses, and how small businesses are often ill-equipped to negotiate effectively and profitably with large companies. So I'm very passionate about leveling the playing field for small and mid-sized companies when they're negotiating with companies that have more power and leverage than they do. And so I've created programs to help small businesses do just that.
I love it. And we can definitely, I want to come back to that. I would take notes, but my mind's moving a little too quick. But I want to come back to that. My question on that will be, what are some examples that they will, that a small business or a vendor, somebody who might want to work with a bigger company, get to? But first, I want to, I don't want to say congratulate you, but I definitely want to bring note to the fact, when we see people who are successful in life, we often see them up here, and we see when they're speaking on the stages, and we see them with the MBA titles, and we're like, wow, that's impressive. But, when you look back at an individual's career, you were a single mom, you're on welfare for 8 years. You've overcome. You're like the epitome of resilience and stickability, so to speak. Is a great book by Greg Reed. And so first I want to, and that's one thing that people, myself, I grew up in Boston in the projects, and so there's a lot of people that I just want the listeners to understand that you too can become, so no matter what your circumstances are, 8 years you were on welfare, and you put yourself through school, through a community college, 4.0 degree, well, you probably had kids, well, you were probably working a couple of jobs. So, I mean, it wasn't like, you were spoon-fed anything. And then you went on to get an MBA. And so to me, it's just a testament that, people can do anything that they really set their mind to, as long as they, have a different type of mindset. It's not that I have to, it's that I get to, you know what I mean? Absolutely. So, it's just different mind shifts. So kudos for you on all that. And an MBA from Harvard, right in my own backyard, right down the street here, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And, you mentioned you lived in Massachusetts for quite a while too.
I did, yes.
All right, so now back to business. So you help people negotiate, business owners, entrepreneurs, if they want. One thing I also love about, and I talk to my clients about, is another way to, and Alex Stern talks about this in Pillars of Success, and he has a great presentation on that. You don't have to be the one to find the golden goose. The golden goose can already exist. So somebody like you who knows how to work with these bigger companies, they may have a great platform. They may have some great service or product. And then you come along and see another way that it could be delivered a little bit better, a little bit more convenient, with a little, just a little bit better, or an add-on. I could use this service, but if it did this, it would make it so much more easier. So now you come in and you create that little piece. The big company will either work with you as a vendor or maybe just buy you out. Am I correct on any of that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I talk about is really good. There's a difference between kind of bargaining and negotiating. And a lot of negotiators, a lot of people they do more bargaining, which by that I mean they focus on single issues. And so they may even have a checklist of, these are all the things that I want to get. Check, I got this. Check, I got that. Oh, I didn't get that. Check, I get that. And they look across that list and they tally up the check marks and say, if I got more than I didn't get, then I did okay. But the reality is that's actually not as much negotiation as it is bargaining for each of those items. Negotiation is being able to look across all of those items and say, what is the optimal mix of things that create the greatest value? So I call it about looking, really very good negotiators look for unspoken incentives that create a bigger pie. So now there are times when bargaining is appropriate, and that is the right thing to do. If you're going to go buy a car, you're bargaining. It's not a negotiation. It's a bargain.
Right.
But if you're trying to work with, let's say you're trying to work with my old company, Verizon, and you're a small business owner, and maybe you are a technology company, you go and you have to negotiate with Verizon, you need to look for those unspoken incentives because they have an incredible amount of power and influence. They have language in their contracts that's really onerous for small businesses. And one of two things usually happens. Either a company like Verizon, or take your pick of any other larger organization, slides the contract across the table, and small business owner signs it, or they hand it over to an attorney who doesn't understand their business. And so what I do is help people understand how to read contracts. That's one, because there are 5 aspects to a contract, and only one of them is legal. 4 of them are business. Contracts are risk mitigation tools that deal with 5 types of risk: legal risk, cash flow risk, profitability, operational risk, and strategic risk. And so when we hand contracts to an attorney, they understand one of those 5 risks. So we're leaving, a huge percentage, of 80% of that contract is not legal. And so
that's an amazing point.
It is, I mean, everything from delivery terms and price and, payment terms and liabilities and warranties. And those are not, you'll hear a lot of people talk about, a lot of attorneys will get off on a limitation of liability. But in every company I've ever dealt with across the board, all of the major corporations, if that clause becomes a huge sticking issue, every attorney at the end of the day looks to their business people and says, at the end of the day, it's a business decision. How much risk are you willing to assume in this relationship? And that's a business decision. And so when business owners and entrepreneurs and executives have a better understanding of how to think through their contracted relationships in terms of their business risk playing out in those documents, it changes the nature of how you think through your negotiation. And it puts a lot more power in the business owner, to the business owner and to the small to mid-sized CEO than it does with a large company.
That's huge. And even though in hearing you saying that, and I went to law school, I had a 4.0 GPA, but I went, as a paralegal, not as a lawyer. And I went and I do a lot of my own contracts, but I had an original one done by an attorney because you always want to have something done objective. But when I go through it, I sit there and I do go through those things, but in my mind, I was looking at it as this was all, no matter what category it fell in, to me, this was a legal document. And what we were doing was, establishing the legal boundaries between us. But listening to you, I mean, and I've been doing this for years, so I'm great. I can only imagine somebody who has virtually no or much less experience. So how can people learn more about that? And then we can move on to other stuff as well.
Well, the first thing they can do, one of the things I talk about, so for me, negotiation occurs at the intersection of three things. It occurs at the intersection of knowing what you want, knowing how to ask for it, and then documenting to make sure you're getting it. So in other words, it occurs at the intersection of numbers, people, and words. And so how you ask for something is critically important. So, I have a negotiation quiz that people can take, which I think we're going to put a thing down later on that.
I'll put it up right now.
But you can learn your default negotiation style, because that will drive how your ability to get what you want and what you ask for. And then on my website, which is at vennegotiation.com, you can actually, and I'm actually typing that in the chat so that you have that, because I forgot to put that on earlier. But you can look at my programs. I have programs on teaching people how to renegotiate. Right now, renegotiation is a huge thing, and people especially, and I find this especially true for small business owners. We get into this mindset that says, well, I signed a contract, therefore it's like carved in stone somehow. But it's not. Like, truly successful businesses know when something is not working for them, and then they go and they ask for a change in the relationship. And renegotiation happens far more often than I think, that at least in my experience, than what I call pure general greenfield negotiations occur. Greenfield negotiation, or I come in, I've never met you, we're starting this relationship, you have a piece of sets of information that I know nothing about, and I have the same. So we have to figure out how to come together, and we do that whole dating and the song and dance thing, and then we finally enter into a contract. But in order for companies to be successful, every salesperson will tell you that the best customer is the customer they already have. And in order to keep your customers, you have to be willing to renegotiate. And companies do not often have a policy around renegotiation. They'll enter into an agreement, and the agreement will either stay the way it is, or they'll make some minor changes. But companies should be reevaluating and renegotiating their relationships every 3 to 5 years. Because otherwise you end up with things that don't make sense in the relationship.
In the current relationship, things have changed. The world's changed, pricing has changed, and the customer might decide to move on. So that negotiation is an extension, it's client retention. And I agree with you 100%. I remember one time I was amazed at the numbers when I saw that AT&T, and this might not be, this is my memory, so don't hold me to it literally, but they said that they spent about $400 to acquire a customer. But when they do acquire that customer, that customer is usually there long-term under contracts. They're buying phones. First of all, the 400's a write-off, but but then now they've, if they spend 400, but they made, 6,000 over the next 5 years, it was well worth it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so but now if that same customer, when they're upselling them or giving them second and third levels of service, it's so much easier than it was the first one. So I agree with you on all that. What are some tips? Could you give us 3 tips to people who, with their negotiations, pretend we have either somebody who's just starting a business, what is something they need to know, somebody who is already in business and is looking to scale, and somebody that might be large in either looking to scale or maybe looking to exit?
Well, the first thing is actually know your negotiation style. So one of the things that, and obviously, I mean, having gone to Harvard Business School, I loved being there. I learned so much, and I was honored to learn from the professors who wrote some of the, the initial books in academics on negotiation and getting to yes and getting past no. And the thing that's so important and that didn't get taught when I was at Harvard was negotiation style. So you'd get cases and you'd go and you'd do your negotiation, you go back and you report out. But the problem is that when you learn that way, you're not learning how to make adjustments. So knowing your negotiation style, because you're going to default to something and your style does not mesh with everybody else's and necessarily. And so knowing what that style is, knowing when it's useful, when it is, can suit you, and then how to adjust and use the other styles, because we use all of them. It's just one we tend to use more than the others. So knowing that is important because the how of the way that you ask for something matters. And then the second tip is be prepared. You have to understand what you want and what you need. And there's a huge difference, right? So your need is your floor. What is the base of what you have to have in order to make the deal work? But then it's what is it that you want to have in order to be able to meet your profit margins, work operationally, and so you're not making huge adjustments to the business. But one of the things that people don't do very often is they don't have enough information to analyze that, and they don't then extrapolate that to their counterpart, because you also have to have a view of what the economics of a relationship are going to mean for your counterpart. I was talking to somebody just recently, and I do this in my programs. I teach people how to, like, if you're negotiating with a supplier, the number one thing you need to know is what drives your supplier's costs. If you're buying something and it's a product and it's got lots of steel, you should know what's going on in steel prices. If you're buying commodity, if you're buying a product, if you're manufacturing food, you should know what commodity pricing is doing in food, because those are what's driving your supplier's costs. And you need to be able to estimate what those costs are, bake in what you think is a reasonable margin for them so they're profitable, but then that's where you negotiate. And when you have that kind of information, it levels the playing field. And then the third thing is be smart about documenting your relationships. I was negotiating with a client once. It was a big company. They had a $600,000 contract with EMC at the time and didn't have a contract for it. That just increases risk so much, and you have no recourse in those situations. And so make sure you're documenting your relationships, because that's how you then measure the value and the success of that relationship. It also gives you the basis on which you can renegotiate when you need to. If things aren't working in the relationship and you have a good contract, you now can go and say, okay, this is what I need to renegotiate, and you can prepare for that in advance.
I love it. And this is high level stuff. So I'm really hoping that people go back and watch this 2 or 3 times and then reach out to you. I want to put your ticker back up there again, because people need to hear that. But now when people hear about negotiations and they hear about contracts, there's also things called operational agreements. So what's the difference really between an operational agreement and, well, we have the negotiation is the process of creating whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
So, but we have a contract, and then we have the operating agreements, which sometimes are a little bit different. Does that come into play here at all, or is it kind of like not really relevant?
So, I mean, so for me, like, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to when you talk about an operational agreement, but for me, there are times when you have operating agreements within a broader contract. So you might have like a master service agreement, and then within that, behind that, you might have different operating agreements relative to specific projects, or different things that you have to do. In technology, your support and maintenance agreement is to me kind of more of an operating agreement. It defines exactly what you're going to do to support a customer,
Exactly.
and there are penalties and issues related to that. So for me, I don't make that distinction. For me, that's still the contract, and so I don't make a distinction between that. Then you have you can have an operating document that's more of a manual that is created to, to define the process of what you're doing, but isn't necessarily legally binding in court. Even though if you were an attorney, you'd say you bring the operating manual into court anyway. So it's that's why I kind of don't separate the two from a practical perspective.
Well, I love it. And for what I meant by that, you did kind of cover it, is, but like when you have an LLC or you have a corporation, you have the corporation, then you have you have partners, you'll have, but the process, no matter what the thing is, right? The process of creating it, whether it's a contract, article of agreement, whatever it is the negotiation part. And that's what you really help people with, learning their negotiation skills, leaning into them, and learning the difference between what you must have, what you want, what you need, the difference in between negotiating and the difference in between bargaining. And I really wouldn't have thought myself, I would have the bargaining part. Yeah. I would have just balled that up with negotiation. So I'm getting educated here today, and so I appreciate it. This is definitely a great way to start. 11 a.m. People haven't even had their third coffee yet, so you know what I mean. And we're already hitting them with stuff, but it's so good because these are super important issues. And if you can get past, if you make a mistake on the fundamental stuff, down the line, it's going to come back and it's really going to cost you. So, getting this stuff ironed out so everybody has a clear set of expectations, there's clarity, what I'm going to do, what you're going to do, what the payout is, what the pay in is. So I think it all comes down a lot to communication too, right? Good negotiation is good communication. You cannot have one without the other. And different styles, there's been obviously a lot of research done on negotiation style, but I tend to fall into some work that's been done out of Cornell. And in that study, the professor, whose name for some reason, because it's 8:30 in the morning here and not 11:30, is totally escaping my head off the top of my head. But in her research, what she found is in the United States, at any rate, roughly 65% of negotiators are bargainers. They negotiate from they negotiate from positions of self-interest and single issue negotiations. So that's just something for all of us to keep in mind, because it is the most common way of negotiating, especially in the US, but it drives behavior that creates more on a scarcity perspective than an abundance perspective. Because if you're negotiating from a position of abundance, right, you can see the pie getting bigger. That's how you envision things. But when we're negotiating from single positions, right, we're looking at things. If I don't win this, then right, so then it becomes a scarcity issue, and that becomes challenging over time. I love it. This is excellent. We got about 3 to 5 minutes left. What is it that you would love people to know? You give out your contact info again. I'll put it down here at the bottom. But connect with people. Why connect?
So the thing that I hear people say the most is that people either love negotiation but aren't very good at it because they're bargaining, or the majority of people, when I'm in front of a room or I'm meeting people and I ask them if they love to negotiate, most people hate it and they're afraid of it. And they'll say, I'm not good at it. But that's not right. The reality is we've all been negotiating since we were children, and we have all gotten things that we've wanted and needed and asked for. And so learning how to ask is so important. Learning how to define what you're asking is critical, and then making sure you document it to get, so you know you're getting what you wanted and what you needed. And every one of us can be an amazing negotiator. We need to practice it, because it's one of those things that it's a skill, and we have to practice skills. And so practicing it is hugely important. And in the programs that I do I have a 2-day program, which is very hands-on, where people work in groups and we actually practice negotiation, and I handhold people and will literally sit and say, what if you asked it this way? What if you had this piece of information? And so you get really interactive on it. And I love it. I love helping people get more of what they want. It's one of the,
and it's so vitally important. And I like your mindset. There is a big difference between bargaining and negotiating. And when you're bargaining, oftentimes it's one-offs. So you're coming from a scarcity mindset opposed to an abundance mindset. So, I mean, you're constricted anyhow. When you're coming from a scarcity mindset, you're constricted, you're breathing. There's a whole stuff around that type of mindset. So the people who are watching this and who will see the reruns, or at least on my feed, they're all business owners and entrepreneurs themselves. So, this is really good information for them, because they're out there. I help people create their online presence, and then gets their products and services in front of the people who need them. But what happens then is it's their responsibility to close them. I'm in the marketing, and there's a big difference between marketing and sales. So when they're in that sales state of mind, that's where that negotiation comes in. And even in the messaging, even in the marketing messaging, but because you've got to prime people. So when they get to there, they're already ready for an open conversation. Instead of saying, you give me $100, I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why, that sometimes that transactional clarity is needed. If you're buying a cup, it's $4, right? But you know what I mean? But oftentimes in business, when you're having a relationship, there's much more to it. And I think it's vitally important. And thank you. I mean, I never really thought about the difference between bargaining and negotiating. I lumped it together. And for me, that was important. But what was really important for me as an individual was the mindset behind it. The mindset behind it being coming from a scarcity point of view instead of an abundance point of view. And anybody who's done any type of self-development knows that that's a whole world of, you want to be in that abundance mindset, because it literally will set you free, and it just makes for better interactions with everybody all the time. So, any last words for our viewers now and in the future? I mean, this is going to live on. Someone might see this a year from now, 2 years from now.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and just negotiate with your heart and your mind, and you will achieve amazing things. It's just, and I am here, my team is here to help you in any way. I look forward to seeing you hopefully in my programs, and please go to text 2678, text negotiation to 2678. 26768 to learn your negotiation style, and stay in touch.
Yeah, that text is going along the bottom right now. So yeah, I highly recommend people both for a legal point of view, but also a business point of view. It's going to help your business grow better because you're going to understand things better. And when you're putting things together, even when you're talking with a client, never mind other vendors or other people you have to do business with, when you're in the conversation with your client before they're a client, when you can better work your negotiation skill and come from an abundance mindset, how can we? I'm here to serve you, not sell you. Yeah. So I absolutely love this. So I want to thank you very much. And I'm just going to close out the show. You're still going to be on in the background. So hi, everyone. You've been listening to a great guest today. Christine has been amazing. She teaches people how to negotiate. And there's a difference between negotiating and budgeting. There's a difference between having a scarcity mindset and having an abundance mindset. And when you have the negotiation parts down correctly, whether it's in the sales process with your employees, even with your mates, but with other vendors, if you're trying to sell or do business with somebody at a much higher level, as you can see, I mean, there's unlimited places and opportunities for you to utilize these perfected skills. So I highly recommend you text what's going along the bottom right here, the word negotiate to 26768. Connect with Christine and learn from her. I mean, she's a great person. And you've been listening to Success Secrets Revealed with Ronald Couming. We are sponsored by RCS Online Solutions, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs much like you attract, convert, and retain their ideal customers and clients to achieve even greater success using various internet marketing techniques and methods. And let's be honest, awareness equals opportunity. You can have the best products, the best services, the best websites, the best funnels. You can have the best videos. You can have the best everything. If people can't find you when they're searching for your products, solutions, and services, you don't have anything, or you have a whole lot less of whatever you do have. So you need to be on the first page of the search engines. Anyone who tells you you don't, they're trying to sell you some social media software stuff. Anyhow, my name's Ron Couming. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, 978-606-5432. Thanks, everyone.